Time travel plus system plus group pet plus getting rich plus warm daily life, from an elderly leftover girl to a young unmarried girl. The person to be married is said to be the most rebellious young man from all over the country. But it was this most rebellious young man who doted on her, loved her, and cared for her for a lifetime. The female lead is delicate and soft, while the male lead is a strong warrior. Warm daily life, not following the path of imperial examinations and official positions, will raise small buns. See you in other books, waiting for you guys. Keywords of the novel. Sweet and soft wife, spoiled by a rough husband. Without pop-ups. Sweet and soft wife, spoiled by a rough husband, exploded by a rough husband. Download the full text of the text. Sweet and soft wife, spoiled by a rough husband. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Having to marry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Having to marry. Dazhao, Chujia village, Chulin family. The ticking sound of joy outside the house signifies the happiness of this household. But none of the people inside the room opened their smiling faces. Sister, our father has received so much gift money from him, 10,000 yuan. What if he gets angry and treats you badly? Can we refund the money? Refund. How to refund? Dad has already spent the money on Doubao. If he can really get it back from the doctor's hands, do you think Dad will be unwilling? Can we just let sister get married like this? Otherwise, what should we do? But I heard my brother. Law is a hunter, hitting someone is really painful. Woo-woo. The sharp discussions were interspersed with a few cries. Sitting on the bed, Chu Hongdo, dressed in red attire, couldn't help but sigh. Feeling one by one, no, it was the head of the original owner's 6 sisters and 1 younger brother. There were still countless words to say, but in the end, he calmly said, I'll get married. But, was a slightly older girl who wanted to refute, but Chu Hongdo shook her head, indicating that she didn't say anything more. With a sigh, he said again, if I don't marry Wan Qing, can I marry the widower in the village? There are still too few families who can take out 30 taels of silver at once. This time, my father knows how to hurt people. He changed his mind when he saw me hang once, but next time, will Doubao still sell me if he gets sick again? I am already 17 years old, and in my father's eyes, I am no longer from my own family. Either I will be arranged as a widower or someone else's concubine. At least he's still a hunter now. Marrying a hunter is better than marrying that widower who is used to gambling. After finishing a sentence, the whole room was silent, except for the 3-year-old Doubao who creaked his mouth and cried out in attachment, sister, sister. It was this sound of sister that immediately made Chu Hongdo's eyes red, and even the other little girls in the room couldn't help but cry. A slightly older girl couldn't bear it the most. She couldn't help but slap little Doubao's buttocks and mutter, sister, you'll call me sister. Do you know what our sister has done for you? You're lucky. You're only 3 years old and don't know anything. Our mother died when she was born, and it was our sister who took care of you. As a result, there wasn't any good news for you. When Dad saw that you were sick, he wanted to sell her. Now sell big sister, wait for the next time, wait for you to get sick again, will you sell second sister, third sister, fourth sister, as well as me, sixth sister, and seventh sister. Speaking is just a whimper. And that 3-year-old little Doubao couldn't help but blink his clear big eyes. He doesn't understand why Sister Wu wanted to hit him. I don't understand what Sister Wu really means. I even thought my sister was playing with him, but I couldn't help but just haha. Children's laughter is extremely clear and pleasant, but those who hear it cannot laugh. Even the little girl was half crying and half laughing, watching the little one hip-hop and couldn't help but nod his head. You. Speaking is like wiping tears fiercely, but no matter how you wipe it, it won't clean up. This state suddenly spread to the people in the room. After a while, the whole room couldn't help but burst into tears. Even Red Bean couldn't help but blush in her eyes, wanting to cry, crying for the original owner, and even crying for herself. What kind of bad luck did she have? She was originally a 26-year-old social animal, an orphan. Although tired, she didn't lack food and drink, and no one urged her to get married. But when she opened her eyes, she became a 17-year-old girl from Chujia village in Dazhou. The original owner, also known as Chu Hongdo, was very favored by name, but as soon as Chu Hongdo talked about this, he couldn't help roast that this forced era was originally poor, but the poorer the poor, the more he could live. The mother of the original owner was named Lin Sanyang. She married Chu Lin for nearly 20 years and had 8 children at once. Yes, 8. The first 7 are all girls, named Chu Hongdo, Chu Uldu, and Chu Huangdo. By this name, one can tell that the child born becomes more and more adaptable, with a traffic light indicating when naming. If that's the case, it's decent. After all, it still has some color and is considered a formal name, but then it becomes more and more perfunctory. The other girls she gave birth to are called Si Do, Wu Do, Lu Do, and Chi Do, respectively. And Doubao. Yes, Doubao, only 3 years old, the only one in the family with a handle, son. Just from the 2 words, Doubao, you can see how precious it is to smash it into this family. Unfortunately, when Lin Sanyang gave birth to him, she was already old and had several children in a row. Her health had long been in deficit, and when she gave birth to Doubao, she would be dead. At that time, the original owner was only 14 years old and a half-year-old girl. However, the elder sister is like a mother. It was the 14-year-old girl from the original owner who defecated and urinated, pulling little Doubao to the age of 3. Unfortunately, even so, as the least valuable girl in the family, she was still sold when it was time to be sold. A month ago, Doubao, who was already weak, suddenly fell ill and needed valuable medicinal materials to hang. However, the Chu family, who had been giving birth continuously, could not afford 1 or 2 silver coins. In the end, Chu's father still had a 17-year-old, original owner's idea. After inquiring, I found out about a widower named Chu Fugue from the same village. He is 38 years old and enjoys gambling and drinking, but his family is still wealthy. They saw that the original owner was a big yellow flower girl, and she was the most beautiful girl in the village. With a nod, they discussed with Chu's father to sell her for 30 taels. The original owner knew and was unwilling, so he hung himself to death. When she woke up, the original owner had passed away, but instead it was Chu Hongdo who came. During this month, Chu Hongdo also thought a lot and made money, but ended up with no original funds and only brought an encyclopedia system. The encyclopedia system is a collection of knowledge types, with a wide range of knowledge, including cooking, handicrafts, animal husbandry, as well as even pharmaceuticals, fitness, and boxing. However, there is no shopping mall, no space, and even no Lingquan. What does this mean? It means there is no original capital. She has to rely on her hands for everything. She can also rely on her hands. She is willing to learn crafts and make money according to the systematic teaching method. Unfortunately, since that hanging, she couldn't even leave her room. The money-making plan is completely ruined. Until 3 days ago, her father, also known as Chu Lin, suddenly received a message. A hunter from the neighboring Wanjia village came to propose marriage, still 30 taels. This time, the other party is a 19-year-old youth. She is 17 and the man is 19. Judging by their age, Chu Hongdo's father ordered her to marry even if she didn't, and even if she died, she would have to die on the beds of countless families. Then, there was this marriage. She also considered running away from marriage, but for one thing, the time was too short. Secondly, for the past month, she has been eating clear soup and little water, and she has no strength at all. 3 times, the doors and windows were tightly closed, and she felt powerless. In short, there are too many difficulties for her to escape. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Surprisingly, he is the one to be married. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Surprisingly, he is the one to be married, and this marriage, stop it, if I say I'm willing, I won't go back. Anyway, this time I'm married, it's you, the mung bean. Speaking of this, Red Bean sighed and looked at Green Bean, saying, if I get married, the biggest one in my family is Green Bean. As an older sister, I originally intended to say that when I got married, I would leave the younger brothers and sisters in the family to you. But I know that even without my words, you would definitely take care of them. So today I'll say something different to you. As soon as Red Bean said this, his face became solemn, as if there was something important to announce. The other sisters couldn't help but look over seriously when they saw it. When Red Bean saw that they were all attracted, he said loudly, my sisters, I hope you are all well. You all know my situation. It was sold by my father. Although my father changed his job as a buyer this time, selling is selling. Selling girls is like gambling. Since Dad has started to sell his heart, he will not stop. Maybe he will even take notice of you. If he can sell me, he can sell you. Red Bean deliberately threatened, but in fact, it was also for the safety of these girls. This family, since they have a father who sells girls, is definitely not safe. So, she must give them a lesson. The girls who looked at the whole room were very scared, so they continued to add weight to them and said, Dobao is a male boy. I don't worry, but you are all girls and have a father who values boys over girls. So, in the future, be careful of yourself and don't be fooled by being sold by your father. I was sold, it's irreparable, I just hope the remaining sisters are okay. In the end, we can't have a second girl being sold in our family, said Red Bean firmly. But what if Daddy really sells us, said the girl anxiously, scaring everyone in the room because of fear, their voices were filled with tremolo. Red Bean was also sad, wiping his eyes hard before saying, now that Dad just sold me, maybe he won't do it in the short term. Anyway, be vigilant. When you hear this news, you must find a way to tell me that these two villages are not far away. Even if I risk my life, I can't let Dad sell you anymore. Sister. Another house full of crying. Red Beans also cry. At present, they do not know that what they said has long been heard by people outside the window. The tall and upright man couldn't help but cough lightly with his hand against his lips. Others couldn't help but laugh awkwardly upon hearing it. Even Chu Lin's face turned black, and his body trembled for a moment, almost unable to stand firm. Yes, he values men over women. He sells women. He's shameless. Waves of worries surged in Chu Lin's heart, and he almost carried them on his back. Father-in-law. Wan Qing saw this and quickly grabbed him, which helped him stand firm. Chu Lin chuckled and said, it's okay, it's okay. You pick up your kiss. The matchmaker, Kai Hua, finally reacted to the situation and ignored the reactions of the outsiders. She burst out laughing twice and said, crying for marriage, crying for marriage. If you don't cry, you'll be mute. We newlyweds are sensible. As she spoke, she covered up the fact that the newlywed scolded her father for selling her daughter. After finishing speaking, he slammed on the door and said, mung beans, soybeans, hurry up and see if the bride is ready. The groom's official wedding is coming. Sister. Green beans and soybeans asked for red beans. And Red Bean pursed her lips, she didn't want to get married, but this person came to the door. At the end, he nodded and said, okay. Just on today's first day of marriage, if nothing unexpected happens tonight she doesn't want to. Biting her teeth, while the person had not yet entered the house, Hongdo quickly grabbed Wudo. Sister. Wudo blinked his clever big eyes and didn't understand what was wrong with her. Red Beans, on the other hand, have a dry laugh. 1 month is enough for her to find out the character of her sisters at home. The second is aggressive, the third is stubborn, the fourth and fifth are twins, but the fourth is honest, the fifth is clever, the sixth and seventh are still young and have not yet formed their personalities. She could only seek help from Lao Wu for this matter in her heart. With such thoughts, he quickly murmured a few words in old Wu's ear. Lao Wu understood, but it seemed like he didn't understand. He couldn't help but shout, "Sister," again. And Red Bean vigorously patted her shoulder. "Anyway, that's what you're doing." A look of being entrusted with important responsibilities. Old Wui saw the elder sister like this, although he didn't quite understand what that meant. He nodded in the end and said, "Okay." After speaking, the whole person held their heads and chest high, looking like they had a sense of responsibility to be entrusted with a mission. Seeing this, Red Bean couldn't help but smile and said, "It's up to you." As she spoke, the door had already opened and Red Bean heard a sound. She quickly covered her head with the red cap. But even so, she still saw a pair of shoes of a different color from under the hood. And one of them black. The shoe size is quite large. Standing quietly in the center of the crowd. Not a single move. But Red Bean seemed to have a premonition that the person he was going to marry might be him. At this moment, Wan Qing was indeed staring at his new bride with good eyes. Just outside the door, he didn't miss what she said. "Hee, it's quite interesting. It looks quite spicy, and I'm quite dissatisfied with him." But he looking at the white bare hands inadvertently exposed from the red wedding dress, Wan Qing couldn't help but feel a twitch in her throat. "It's quite white. I heard that my new bride is the first one in Chujia village. If it weren't for her mother's death and 3 years of filial piety, it probably wouldn't have been his turn." "No, not necessarily. Her mother gave birth to 7 girls, and most people may not dare to marry her. I'm afraid she might give birth to a group of girls like her mother. But their family. It's okay, there are many sons in his family, maybe he can take a break." In just a moment, Wan Qing even thought of the scene of his own children and grandchildren everywhere. Wan Qing's eyes were too hot, and even through a hood, Red Bean couldn't help but shrink nervously. The matchmakers saw it and even thought she was nervous. Quickly trying to make a comeback, all right. Judging from our groom's appearance, he may be very satisfied with our bride. All right, that's all. We'll have plenty of children and grandchildren in the future." As he spoke, he looked at the hour and said, "This auspicious time has arrived, so should we?" Let's go, was Chu Lin's slightly disappointed voice. As he spoke, he waved and said, "Xiangzi, come and send your older sister off for uncle." "Ah," is a voice full of vitality. As he spoke, he shouted at Red Bean, "Sister, you're ready." Red Bean chuckled, deliberately ignoring Chu Lin's slightly disappointed words. After selling everything, why bother pretending to be a living bodhisattva? Therefore, with the signal of the matchmaker, he casually kowtowed 3 heads and was carried into the sedan chair by the uncle's Xiangzi brother. Here, the feet of the newlywed cannot be lifted off the ground. In my mother's family, I have to be carried away by my brothers. When I arrived at my husband's house, I had to be carried by the groom into the house until I finished paying respects. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Sister-in-law, my brother asked me to accompany you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Sister-in-law, my brother asked me to accompany you because they didn't know the future prospects. Red Bean was in a daze all the way. Until bowing to heaven and earth and being sent into the bridal chamber. Chuanfu people and those who joined the fun kept saying auspicious and flattering words, and sometimes even a few vulgar words. The person caught them all while laughing and cursing. This reaction is clearly a jerk. Damn it, then. Will that hit someone? At the thought of this, Red Bean's body trembled. She is an unarmed little woman, with no strength in her past or present life. What if I hit someone? What should I do? Red Beans kept moaning in their hearts. Until, system, I have a system. Although it's just a system, it can be learned, right? Red Bean constantly comforted himself, then opened the system and searched, martial arts, I want martial arts. And then. You really have martial arts skills. Red Beans are almost widening their eyes. Fist techniques, stick techniques, swordsmanship, and even lightness skills are all available, but unlike what she imagined, with just a click to learn, she suddenly gained spiritual energy and knew everything. According to the above explanation, most people need to lay a foundation for several years in order to learn a little bit. If they want to become a hero suddenly, it is simply a dream. Moreover, even if she learns to play rough, she may not be able to surpass the towering Wan Qing. What should we do about this? Red Beans want an immediate and effective way to clean up Wan Qing. Red Bean was so engrossed in his thoughts that he didn't even hear the people inside the room retreat from their laughter. When he realized it, the room was already quiet. Suddenly, a sound of pushing the door rang out. Red Bean's body immediately trembled, worried and asked, "Who?" "Sister-in-law," is a delicate voice, a girl who should be in her teens. As soon as Red Bean spoke like this, he quickly ran over and said softly, "Sister-in-law, my brother has gone out and asked me to come in and accompany you." As he spoke, he took Red Bean's hand and said affectionately, "Here you are." "What?" Red Bean was surprised and quickly looked down until he saw a piece of dried meat nestled in his palm. Dried meat. Suddenly, there was an indescribable feeling in Red Bean's heart. She thought the person was a jerk and unreliable, but she didn't expect that in this moment, he could still carefully send her dried meat. Unable to resist, he said dryly, "Did your brother give it to you?" The little girl nodded, her tone full of joy, and said happily, "My brother said that my sister-in-law didn't eat early in the morning and must be hungry, but the things in the kitchen ahead were not easy to pick up. So he asked me to take a piece of jerky to put on the mat for my sister-in-law first." She leaned over to Red Bean and said, "Sister-in-law, are you thirsty? My brother even gave me brown sugar and asked me to rinse water for you." As soon as a sentence was finished, the little girl ran away without waiting for Red Bean's reaction. Listening to the commotion, it seems like she's really flushing water for her to drink. Until holding hot tea in his hand, Red Bean finally regained consciousness. "Thank you. Thank you. My sister-in-law speaks very well," the little girl said with a smile. Hee hee. Red Bean still chuckled. Sipping on the brown sugar water, the coldness brought by the cold weather on the Red Beans only slightly eased. When she came over, it was October. After being locked down for a month, it was already November when she came out again. This place is located in the north. Although it is only November now, the weather is already very cold and cold. She has only worn 2 layers on her body, which has long been cold. Now with such a bowl of brown sugar water, even Red Bean's heart is extremely warm. After finishing the drink, Red Bean cautiously asked, "What's your name? Is it Wan Qing's own sister?" Before she married over, she only knew that the person she married was Wan Qing, a hunter, and she knew nothing about anything else. At this moment, she wanted to inquire. The little girl probably came with a mission, and as soon as Red Bean asked, she quickly said, "My name is Wan Zi, and my sister-in-law can call me Xiao Zi. I am my brother's biological sister. By the way, what I'm talking about is my older brother, named Wan Qing. He's 19 years old, and I have a second brother and a younger brother. The second brother's name is Wan Chang, 15 years old, and the younger brother's name is Wan Zhuang, 13 years old. Hee, I'm the youngest, 10 years old. In addition to our siblings, we also have our father in our family, who is also an old hunter." Speaking of this, the little girl just hee, it sounds like she's quite happy. And Red Bean, upon hearing this, couldn't help but nod silently. With 3 brothers and 1 girl, it seemed that the family situation was relatively simple. "But, where's our mother?" Red Bean asked with a hint of shyness. "Mother." As soon as she mentioned this topic, Wan Zi felt sad. She glanced at Hongdo and said, "Mother went long ago." "Ah." Red Bean looked dumbfounded. Mom's not here anymore." After realizing it, Red Bean apologized later and said, "Yes, I'm sorry." Hee. 1Z smiled, "Actually, my sister.in.law doesn't have to apologize to me. I heard from my father that my mother left as soon as I was born, but although my mother left, my father and my brothers took good care of me, so I'm not that pitiful either." As he spoke, he affectionately shook Red Bean's hand and said, "Dad said, when my brother marries his wife, my sister.in.law will also hurt me, so that I will have another family member." As she spoke, she couldn't help but sigh, "My sister.in.law's hands are really good, really white, really tender." As he spoke, he stretched out his little hand. The little girl may often do household chores, with hands like chicken feet, black and thin. And what about Red Bean's? A pair of tender hands are like soft catkins, with 10 fingers slender and even joints. The fingertips are still pink, making them look like a pair of wealthy hands. But the fact is contrary to this appearance. The fate of the original owner is truly bitter, but his own conditions are really good. Even, it cannot be described very well. It should be excellent, very good, especially great. Among the 7 sisters in the family, she was the most beautiful in terms of her upbringing. According to others, she completely followed the mother who used to live in a wealthy household. His appearance is really weak willows supporting the wind, and his face is charming like a pool of spring water, refreshing the heart and soul. In addition to being good-looking, there is also a little bit. She is white, very white, naturally white. No matter how it is exposed to sunlight or cause trouble, it is all white and pure. It doesn't look like a person doing farm work at all. That's not bad, her hands and feet seem to have a constitution that can't cocoon. I have planted land and picked feces at home, and even serve a few younger brothers, sisters, and father every day, but I don't have the slightest appearance of being polished. Besides her being thin. Very thin. My waist is almost full. But the important thing, oh, don't mention it. The thought of what was about to happen at night made Red Bean's heart uneasy. I hope he doesn't appreciate his meager conditions. In addition, there are 5 beans. I don't know how things are arranged on her end either. Red Beans kept murmuring in their hearts. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. What happened when I kissed my wife? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. What happened when I kissed my wife? Red Bean was thinking about Wu Dou's matter in his heart, and suddenly, the door slammed again. Big brother. 1Z jumped up and ran towards Wan Qing, excitedly saying, "Brother, how did you come?" "Let me take a look, go ahead and bring your sister.in.law a plate of meatballs," Wan Qing arranged. "Didn't you stop by just now, brother? Why didn't you take it on your own?" The little girl asked unintentionally, but after asking, she had already run out laughing. Then, there were only 2 people left in the room. Red Bean's heart sank, it was intentional to distract people. What does this person want to do? At the thought of this, Red Bean's feet couldn't help but shrink inward. Wan Qing saw it and coughed, "Are you afraid of me?" "No," Red Bean hummed softly. Wan Qing smiled and said, "You said you're not afraid. It depends on what you're prepared for." "Oh, I'm afraid I might eat you." As he spoke, the person couldn't help but take a step forward. Bending down, hooking his head, before the Red Bean could react, his head suddenly reached into the red cap of the Red Bean. "You." Red Beans quickly shrink inside. But Wan Qing's speed is faster, as soon as he extends his head, there is a click sound. Red Bean was almost scared and covered his face, trembling as he said, You rascal. "What kind of thug? This is my own wife, how can we be considered a thug?" As he spoke, he withdrew and stood seriously in front of Red Bean, reaching out to touch his mouth and saying, "Fragrant." "It's a pity, his goal was not originally face. Red Bean was directly infuriated by his shameless face and trembled. Wan Qing, however, was not afraid and continued to smile. Don't be angry, daughter. Law. Even if you're angry, you have to wait. I can coax you. Speaking, he will come forward again. Red Bean paid attention to his feet this time and quickly hid inside at the sight of him. You're doing this again, I'll call someone, he said while avoiding and threatening. What kind of person is it called? Even if someone is called someone, they can only cheer me on. Can they still help you, your little daughter. Law, kick me out. Wan Qing said, ha ha ha, it seems that he really wants to succeed. Red Beans have already been so angry that they have ascended to heaven. They are thinking of a way to seek help when suddenly. Brother, sister. Law, I'm here. It's Wan Zi. Xiao Zi, you're here. Hurry up, I'm hungry. You, give me some food. Red Bean seemed to have found a savior and hurriedly called for Wan Zi. Wan Qing couldn't help but shake her head regretfully when she saw it. First, take a look at the plate in Wan Zi's hand and nod before saying, not bad, that's this meatball. Give your sister. Law more to eat. Finally, he arranged, you eat too. I know, Wan Zi chuckled. As he spoke, he walked towards the Red Beans holding the meatballs and enthusiastically said, sister-in-law, eat it. Oh, said Red Bean absent-mindedly, her small heart pounding uncontrollably. She imagined the Wan Qing she was going to marry. At first, she thought that although this person was a hunter, at least she should know and understand. With understanding and understanding, perhaps she could still explain and ease the relationship. Only when the two become familiar can she become husband and wife. But now the real Wan Qing is like a big-tailed dog. A fast-colored big-tailed dog. Red Beans are almost scared. She knew that such a person would definitely not be able to reason. She only hoped that Wu Dou could give her some strength and do that for her. Just so absent-minded, the Red Beans have already finished nibbling on a meatball. Just as he was about to continue taking it, Wan Qing's voice suddenly came to his ear, I have a good appetite, that's right. I should have a better appetite. It depends on how thin you are. He originally wanted to say that his chest was flawless, but when he saw his sister by his side, he still didn't say it. Just clearing his throat, he suddenly leaned over to Red Bean and whispered, Wife, let's see you tonight. Without waiting for Red Bean to react, the person suddenly jumped out for a long distance. It seems that I have already estimated that Red Bean will definitely kick him. And Red Beans. Wan Qing. The little person in my heart keeps roaring. She has never seen such an inconspicuous person before, she really wants to give this person 2 bites. However, considering herself, what methods can she use to deal with Wan Qing now? Returning to the previous search, Red Bean prioritized placing her chosen fist technique first. She wants to learn, no matter how difficult or late it is. Sooner or later, give Wan Qing some color to see. Rural marriages are simple to handle. It means welcoming the bride for a meal, and by the end of the day, all the guests had already left, leaving only a few family members to have a meal. This marriage is considered over. There's only room left for the wedding. Red Beans look so good, Wan Qing had known for a long time, but it was the first time Wan Qing had seen them so well. I saw the bride under the candlelight, with a jade-white face the size of a palm, eyebrows like distant mountains, eyes like stars, a jade-like nose, and a cherry-like diamond-shaped mouth, a lively and fragrant little beauty. The rouge on the diamond-shaped mouth is red, very red and bright, delicate and tempting, making people tremble. Gu Tun, I don't know who took a sip of water first. Then Wan Qing said, What are you doing? What are you doing? You all go out. After speaking, a handsome face turned slightly red. It looks a bit protective and shy. When others saw it, they couldn't help but tease and say, Oh my God, our groom will protect us now. Brothers, we will go up now. We must get drunk tonight. That's right, on the wedding night, it's just for the brothers. How can they take advantage of the bride? Hey, how do I remember saying that, or did Wan Qing say it? As he spoke, the person greeted him again. Brothers, how did Wan Qing deal with us before? Let's deal with him today. Let's go and seek revenge. As he spoke, there was a resounding response. A large group of people began to stir up again. Although red beans hang their heads down, they can see everything they need to see. All present were young and middle-aged people from the village, who looked very young and about average in size. They were probably his accomplices. And what about Wan Qing? To be honest, her expectations for Hunter Wan Qing are not high, but at first glance today, she looks quite good. Especially since he must be at least 1.8 meters tall, he looks relatively thin, but from his hands, it can be seen that this person must have some strength. His facial features are also very upright. No, besides being upright, it's also particularly delicate. If such a person doesn't wear the clothes of a hunter, it is likely that someone would believe him as a scholar. At first glance, in terms of appearance, the red beans are considered to have passed the level. It's this kind of personality. Red Bean swallowed her saliva secretly, she really couldn't resist. Seeing that it's already dark, why hasn't Wudo come yet? Red beans are in a hurry. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Fragrant Wife. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Fragrant Wife. Drink, let's keep drinking. At the entrance, Wan Qing said hoarsely. The people on the side all supported Wan Qing and couldn't help but scold. What are you drinking? What are you all drunk like? I'm not drunk, was Wan Qing's stubborn voice. Okay, you're not drunk, we're drunk. A few people walked into the room with Wan Qing in their arms. When they saw Red Bean, they couldn't help but feel a hint of shyness and awkwardly said, Sister-in-law, oh no, sister-in-law, then Wan Qing will leave this and this to you. As he spoke, he sent Wan Qing into the room. Someone was there, and Red Bean helped out. After saying thank you, this group of people closed the door and walked out. Red Bean looked at the person who had already left, and then at Wan Qing lying on the bed, couldn't help but scrutinize his facial features. Sword eyebrows and starry eyes, with a high nose bridge, his mouth had already been pursed into a straight line because he was drunk. However, this way of looking, it no longer had the frivolous Meng Lang like before, but instead gave people a feeling of stability and perseverance. Without cheeks, her jawline is very smooth, and she has a sense of being handsome like her favorite male star Zhu Yan in her past life. Especially, it looks quite expensive in this way. It's the kind of person who looks good but feels expensive. It wouldn't be bad to live with someone like this for a lifetime. Red Beans murmured softly. She is Yen Go. The more handsome her husband is, the more she likes him. When I think this way, I can't help but giggle. Then, have you seen enough? Suddenly, the man's voice reached Red Bean's ears, and before she could react, with a thud, Red Bean had already been thrown onto the bed by the man. Ah! Red Bean exclaimed in surprise. This person is too sudden. Red Bean was almost scared out of his wits and panicked, asking, Are you not drunk? Just as he finished speaking, Red Bean was certain, No, you're pretending to be drunk. Wan Qing panted heavily and said, Those little turtles really want to intoxicate me, but don't even look at who I am. I'm the one who wants to have a bridal chamber. As he spoke, he was about to get closer. Red Bean's face has almost caught up with braised clouds. It's one thing to be willing to spend a lifetime with this face, but it's one thing to explain yourself here today. Quickly pushing him in a panic, you slow down. Slow. No, I've been waiting for years. Wait a few years, what does that mean? Red Bean asked, her hands constantly blocking him, but her strength was still too weak. However, after a while, a thin layer of sweat broke out on Red Bean's body. This person is really too difficult to handle. There is a huge disparity in strength, and Red Beans can only be achieved through intelligence. After thinking for a moment, Hongdo quickly gritted her head and said, I have something to discuss with you. What's up? Are you in a hurry? If you're not in a hurry, let's finish the task before we talk. As she spoke, Wan Qing opened her clothes with one hand. He didn't wear much, and as soon as he took off his outer shirt, his strong chest was exposed. Red Beans, hurry up and don't dare to look. Wan Qing saw it and chuckled. Then one hand directly touched Red Bean's face and said arrogantly, look at me. I don't. Red Beans are still struggling. Wan Qing, who only acted as his daughter-in-law, was arguing with him, and his heart was about to bloom. Seeing him like this, Red Bean knew he couldn't do anything good today. He quickly thought of an idea and said, You have a smell of alcohol on your body, and you haven't washed your mouth yet. Rinse your mouth. I have a clean mouth, don't rinse, said Wan Qing as he leaned in again. Red Bean was in a hurry and quickly said, but I'm disgusting. Nausea. Nausea me. It has to be said that Wan Qing was directly stimulated by this sentence. His strong body suddenly stopped, even frowning. Looking at Red Bean, it seemed dissatisfied. No one has ever said in person that he is disgusting. Is he really disgusting? At this moment, the teenage boy suddenly became suspicious of himself. Isn't he the most popular young man in the village? Red Bean didn't know what he was thinking, so he suppressed his fear and insisted, You rinse your mouth. Rinse your mouth to sleep. Red Beans were directly questioned. However, she didn't want to explain it here now. Thinking about the previous arrangement with Lao Wu, looking at the time, it was probably about time. She quickly pushed him and said, Go ahead. Go ahead, go ahead. Wan Qing gave her a sidelong glance and ran outside as if. Then, without any accidents, there was another round of jokes. Good kid, so you're pretending to be drunk. If you pretend to be drunk, then pretend to be drunk. How come the bride didn't go to bed with you and even kicked you out? Ha ha ha, there are still young ladies who can't handle us, Wan Qing. Waves of laughter came through the door, and Red Bean's face couldn't help but feel hot. There is too much information for her to digest. What can't be done, little ladies? And Wan Qing just said something that slipped out of his mouth, has he been enduring it for a long time? What are you enduring? Did you already fall in love with the original owner, or did your physiological needs remain unresolved? Red Bean has some emotional cleanliness tendencies, and she doesn't have any emotional history herself. If this person had other girls in her heart before, Red Beans dare not think about it, but the more they think about it, the more it becomes unpleasant. Taking advantage of this moment, she quickly tidied up her messy clothes. However, she was still uneasy. After some thought, she quickly tied a knot around her waist. Then, it's about scratching the heart and lungs. Not waiting for Wan Qing, but waiting for Lao Wu. Quickly, Wan Qing rushed over in a hurry, and as soon as he ran in, he slammed the door shut. Without waiting to talk to Red Bean, he immediately jumped onto the bed and asked, How about it? Is it clean or not? It's not disgusting anymore, is it? Let's continue now. Speaking, we have to continue. Red Bean's face was turned red directly, and even after this, old Wu still didn't come. She was already very anxious in her heart. But wait. This thought blocked Wan Qing, I haven't washed up yet. That's okay, I don't mind you. But I despise myself, so I have to wash myself. Where to wash? Wan Qing said solemnly, seeming to be fine. But as a young woman who grew up in a pile of jokes all year round, when Red Bean heard Wan Qing's question, her face turned red and she glared at him, saying, Wash your face, wash your feet, wash everything. Hee hee. Wan Qing was not angry even when he was stared at, and even looked at Red Bean like this, his heart was even more joyful. My wife actually understands him. A daughter.in.law is not an ordinary carefree daughter.in.law. Satisfied in her heart, she was even more generous with her sweet words. My wife is beautiful, even if she glares at people. But my wife is still fragrant without washing. Speaking, he became dishonest again. Trying to unbutton the Red Bean. But, buttons. It's a dead knot. Daughter-in-law. A penetrating voice reached Red Bean's ear, and Red Bean felt that this person had already seen through her scheme. Thinking about the muscles he had previously exposed, as well as his strong strength. She, already, has started to be afraid. Stuttering, we. Suddenly, before Red Bean could finish a sentence, he could only hear the sound of a slap on the door. Sister, big sister. It's Wu Dou's voice. Red Bean was excited and jumped up from the bed, tidying up his clothes and walking outside. Wan Qing's face had turned black. Even if it's Wu Dou, you can't go out. That's not possible. She's either my sister or a little girl. If someone came to me this big night, they might be looking for something. It's not up to you, a married girl, to take care of anything. I'll take care of it. Red Bean stubbornly walked out. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Wife, you intentionally. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Wife, you intentionally. Outside the door, Wu Dou had already shouted to open the door. Seeing an old man opening the door, I couldn't help but cry and say, Uncle, please, let me see my older sister. What's wrong with you? The old man asked. Me, my little brother, Wu Dou said while crying. I've been sleeping with my older sister since I was young. When I left, I cried loudly. He's already in poor health and fell seriously ill a few days ago. As soon as he recovered, my older sister got married. If he can't see my elder sister, he will cry loudly. It's only in the middle of the night, he has already fainted from crying twice. Uncle, you can hit and scold me, but my little brother, we can't live without my big sister. Let's meet her. Speaking, he cried loudly and even gave the old man the frozen bean treasure that was about to turn into a ball. Oh, why did I hit and scold you? Isn't your sister getting married now? The old man sighed. Yeah, Wu Dou also sobbed, then said again, I'm an adult. I know my sister is getting married, but my younger brother is still young. He doesn't know what getting married is, but he knows that without an older sister to accompany him, he keeps crying and crying. It seems like he's almost exhausted. Uncle, please have pity on us. With a thud, he was about to kneel down. When Red Bean went out, he happened to see Five Bean kneeling down. Although she knew it might be acting, Red Bean suddenly became nervous and said, 5 beans. As he spoke, he quickly ran over and helped her up. He then looked at Doubao in her arms and said, Brother, how's your little brother doing? Keep crying, keep crying. Seeing Red Bean come out, Wu Dou finally breathed a sigh of relief, but continued to act. A half-grown boy standing beside her couldn't help but secretly hang his head and turned it to one side. Red Bean looked awkwardly at her father.in.law and said, Dad, I'm sorry. Let's take a look at Wan Qing who was caught, as well as the 2.5-year-old boys and Wan Zi in the yard. The 3 children, most likely confused about this matter, asked Red Bean in confusion, Sister-in-law, what's wrong with this? Wan Qing didn't speak, just looked at the Red Bean lightly. Red Bean felt a little guilty and probed, Yes, why don't I coax my younger brother? Hush, hush, this person is here, and we can't help but let someone in, said Grandpa Wan Dashan first. As he spoke, he beckoned people into the yard. Then he ordered, Hurry up and get some food for these 2 children. Red Bean felt embarrassed after listening. This father.in.law seems to be a charitable person, and she. Sigh. Red Bean sighed deeply. Then he buried his head below and held Doubao. Doubao was probably tired, or maybe he found a familiar taste, opened his mouth and yawned, and soon fell asleep. Wu Dou saw embarrassment and said, "How about we go back?" As she spoke, she rubbed her hands and didn't know if she had completed the task given by her sister. Wan Dashan said, "It's so late. What are you going back to?" "Xiaozi, take this girl back to your house. As for this half-big kid." "Uncle, my name is Qiangzi, Chu Qiangzi, and I am a neighbor of Miss Hongdou's house," said the middle-aged boy suddenly. Wan Dashan nodded, "That's it, Qiangzi. You go to sleep with those two kids from my house." As he spoke, he waved his hand to signal everyone to go rest quickly. Arriving at Red Bean, my father-in-law didn't know how to arrange or what, but he didn't say a word. Red beans are even more nervous. I can only silently bring Doubao into my own room. Throughout the process, Wan Qing didn't say a word, just quietly followed Red Bean. Until he arrived at the room, Wan Qing still didn't say a word. I don't know if he was angry or something. Red Bean felt a little guilty and didn't dare to look at Wan Qing. He could only swallow the waterway and said, "Little brother, I'm still young. I'll take it with me first." As he spoke, he quickly bent down and carefully placed Little Bean treasure on their red bed covered with 100 children and grandchildren. "Just put it down." "Ah." Feeling the touch on his back, Red Bean almost screamed out. My whole body also stiffened. Stuttering, "What are you doing?" Behind him was Wan Qing, who walked behind Red Bean at some point. As soon as Red Bean placed Doubao on the bed, Wan Qing hugged her from behind. He had great strength and leaned directly against his chest, holding onto the body of the Red Bean from behind, with a hint of a wicked smile on his lips. "Did you mean it? What's intentional? I don't understand what you're saying." Feeling the heat on his back and the touch on his ear, Red Bean's face turned red like a raging fire, constantly twisting his body. "You let go of me." "Okay, let go of you," Wan Qing said with ease. Then he really loosened the Red Beans. But it was only a moment. In the next moment, he turned the Red Bean around directly. Then, bending slightly, she hugged the waist of the Red Bean. Red Bean's feet suddenly lifted off the ground. Before he could push away his body, Wan Qing leaned forward and directly grabbed the Red Bean's mouth. Red Bean's heart beats wildly. Her first kiss, her first kiss. I don't know how much advantage this man has taken of this day's hard work. Wan Qing seemed to be disorganized, constantly kissing recklessly. Red Beans have a heart pounding wildly. Taking advantage of Wan Qing's breathing, he quickly blocked his mouth and said, "No, it's not possible. If you keep kissing, something will happen sooner or later. Wan Qing. This is my wedding night." Red Bean. "Okay, but my little brother is here." Wan Qing chuckled, "Little brother." This sentence seems to remind him of something. With a release of his hand, he really put down the Red Bean and then turned around to look at the little one lying on his bed. The little one is only 2 or 3 years old, very thin and weak, like a kitten. Looking at her eyebrows and eyes, she has only 2 similarities with her own wife. Okay, even if it's only 2 points, it's still my wife's younger brother, so Wan Qing's mind was spinning fast and his movements were also fast, and he quickly came up with a good idea. As soon as he bent down, he hugged little Doubao. Red Bean nervously said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Let the little one free up." With her other hand, Wan Qing dug out a blanket from the cabinet in the room and laid it directly on the small table in the room. The blanket is very big and still drooping on the table. Wan Qing can be used for both purposes. Place Xiaodubo in the blanket while covering him with the other half of the blanket. It has to be said that although the table is small, it is for eating. But Doubao is smaller. Adding a blanket and placing a pillow under his head really looks like a small bed. Anyway, Doubao has been tossed and turned for so long, still motionless and sleeping soundly. Red beans are speechless. Wan Qing, however, was hesitant. As soon as he finished, he turned around and looked at Red Bean, wife, speaking with a look of urgency. Red Bean. Don't be like this. As he spoke, he crawled into the bed. Wan Qing grabbed her ankle with a big hand. Then there was a wave of earth and mountains shaking. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Wife, give me a baby. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Wife, give me a baby. Red Bean's face has turned blue. After working hard with her, she was still wiped clean after being eaten dry. Wan Qing. Wife, the tone is full of satisfaction after gluttony, as well as a hint of desire and dissatisfaction. Don't shout at me, said Red Bean, holding her blushing face away, hee. The man's deep and pleasant voice was right beside her ear, and he didn't seem to get angry. Seeing Red Bean like this, he didn't get angry either. Instead, he kissed her forehead tightly. Even if my wife is angry, she looks good. Speaking, his hands began to become dishonest again. Red Bean pressed down and said, "What are you doing?" His eyes turned red as he spoke. This experience made her understand what all conspiracies and schemes were unbeatable in the face of immense strength. Wan Qing's eyes sparkled as she looked at her daughter. In Law's bright red corners and finally stopped her hand. Then, lie down obediently. Just as Red Bean felt him calm, Wan Qing turned to one side of his body. His long arms directly wrapped the Red Beans in his arms. Red Bean struggled and said, "Don't touch me. Don't move." The man's deep voice rang out again. Red Beans have a fever in their ears, but they dare not move anymore. Wan Qing was right behind her, smiling and saying, "My wife is so well behaved. Get out." Red Bean scolded lightly. Wan Qing still smiled and didn't look angry at all. This directly makes the Red Bean stand still. She was the only one who was angry about this incident. I can only turn over, lie on my side, and ignore him. Wan Qing still imprisoned her in his arms, kissing her hair with a dishonest mouth. Red Bean. I have never seen someone so anxious before. I deliberately ignored him, but thought of my little brother who was still sleeping on the table. In the end, Red Bean flipped over and said, "I'll go see my little brother." "Little brother, you're doing well," Wan Qing quickly said, flipping out of bed and quickly carrying Do Bao and the blanket as if trying to please Red Bean. Then, with Red Bean's gaze indicating it, he placed it in the middle of them. Yes, in the middle. They are a newlywed couple. On the first night of the bridal ceremony, there was a third person on the bed, still a little cub. Still a little brat with no blood relationship to the male host. And most importantly, the little one is still lying in the middle. Red Beans were originally feeling guilty, but it seems that Wan Qing really didn't care about this matter. After putting the little one away, he lay on his side and crossed little Do Bao with one hand, landing on Red Bean's head. He earnestly said, "Wife, give me a baby." "Uncle, that's it. 3 sentences make no sense. Get lost." Red Beans are really angry. To be born is to be born. Do you know how difficult it was to have a child in ancient times? Not to mention the safety of the mother's body, it's one thing to be able to give birth to this young child. However, in ancient times when conditions were harsh, it was still an ordinary farming family. It was so difficult to raise a young child well. That's it, you still want to give birth. Red Beans couldn't help but have fragmented thoughts in their hearts. The palm also moved uncontrollably to her lower abdomen. Just now, without any contraceptive measures, I don't know if she will Red Bean's side. This night, perhaps because she was tired, or maybe because it was the first time in a month that she felt warmth on her body. She just thought for a while, and then Red Bean fell asleep. In her sleep, Red Bean didn't know that the handsome and energetic man was still observing her carefully at the moment she fell asleep. My wife is really beautiful. The next day, Red Bean woke up with a babbling sound. Open your eyes and say, little brother. Red Bean sat up suddenly, and their thoughts began to roll back. She got married. Moreover, today is still her second day of marriage. She has to wake up early, offer tea, and go to recognize people. Red beans are one head and too big. Quickly put on your clothes. When she got married, she didn't have a bundle in her hand, so she was still wearing the red wedding dress. When she was dressed, she quickly picked up her younger brother and tidied him up. Just as it was finished, I heard a creaking sound at the door. Red Bean turned around and happened to see Wan Qing in a green shirt. He should have gotten up early, and besides, he went to work. My face was covered in sweat. Wan Qing saw his daughter-in-law looking at him and immediately smiled, then took a step and walked over, ready to hug him. Red Bean was afraid of scaring Doubao, so he quickly withdrew and stuffed Doubao into Wan Qing's arms. After doing this, Red Bean realized that he was really tall. She was about 1.6 meters tall, not too short, but standing close to him made Red Bean feel like a dwarf. She only reached his chest, not even her chin. No wonder he hugged so easily. At the thought of this, Red Bean's face turned extremely red. Wan Qing held his brother-in-law in his hand, but his eyes kept smiling as he looked at Red Bean. Seeing her suddenly blush, he couldn't help but tease, "Does my wife blush because she misses me? Fart. Get lost." Red Bean only felt that Wan Qing was his emotional button. When he spoke, she lost her good temper. I can only get angry and angry at him. Red Bean was angry, but Wan Qing was not angry. He hugged little Doubao and flashed twice, then said in a sneaky tone, "Since my wife misses me, I'll make sure to behave well tonight." As he spoke, his head was about to come closer and kiss. You. Red Beans were directly infuriated to the point of ascending to heaven. Afraid of being kissed by him and affecting Xiaodubo, he quickly turned around and slipped out. What kind of person is she marrying? In the yard, the family has already come out, including Qiangzi. It's just that Wu Dou and Wan Zi are not here. I don't know what they went for. Red Bean felt embarrassed and could only greet the old man first, "Dad." Then he looked at the other two kids. Red Bean was about to speak when Wan Qing chased after little Doubao from the house, looking at these two little boys and saying, "These two people, one is the second brother Wan Chang, and the other is the younger brother Wan Zhuang. You can call them Ah Chang and Ah Zhuang." As she spoke, Wan Qing coughed twice and said, "Call me sister-in-law. Sister-in-law. Sister-in-law." Two different voices came out. The one with a hint of cleverness and eye-twitching is Lao Er Wan Chang, while the one with a bit of honesty and dullness is Lao San Wan Zhuang. The two brothers are truly worthy of being Wan Qing's two younger brothers, both of whom look similar to Wan Qing. At first glance, it appears to be biological. Just as I was about to speak, suddenly two more voices came from my back. Sister. Sister-in-law. It's Wu Dou and Wan Zi. Red Bean quickly turned around and looked embarrassed. I saw two little girls holding steaming meals, and at first glance, they had prepared everything. They are still children, you. Red Bean felt a bit embarrassed. As a newlywed, she not only slept in the room, but also brought her own sister and younger brother on the first day. Take them and stay overnight. Even before getting up, the girl and sister-in-law went to the kitchen to work together. The key is that both of these people are younger than her. Shame, I don't know how to face it. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Sample, wait for brother to go out and don't stuck you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Sample, wait for brother to go out and don't stuck you. Red Bean's awkwardly fingered toes were almost plucked out of the 3-bedroom living room. But the few people in the yard seemed to have missed it and kept chattering away. Finally, the old man opened his mouth and said, "Since it's ready, let's eat." As he spoke, he walked into the room with his hands behind his back, unable to see any signs of joy or anger. Red Bean only felt that what he had suffered this time was a label of being a troublemaker attached to him. Awkwardly unable to lift their feet. Wan Qing saw it and touched her head with one hand. "Let's go." As she spoke, she held her hand and headed towards the house. Wan Chang didn't walk fast and happened to turn around to see this scene. As soon as he saw his elder brother touching his sister-in-law, he couldn't help but frown and say, he. "Red Bean. You let go of me." Red Bean blushed with embarrassment and quickly pulled his hand out of Wan Qing's palm. Wan Qing resisted twice, but seeing his daughter-in-law's persistence, he could only let go in the end. Just staring at Wan Chang with a warning in his eyes. "Sister-in-law, save me." Wan Chang laughed heartily and quickly returned to his seat. Red Bean. This is the bride's first meal and it was quite sumptuous. There are steamed stuffed buns, mantou, all 3 kinds of noodles, and the leftovers from yesterday's dinner. Although they are leftovers, they are all complete, especially the meat, which is fresh at first sight. Red Beans couldn't help but suspect that the family conditions were quite good. Wan Chang seemed to see Red Bean's confusion and smiled, saying, "This is what Big Brother went out to fight this morning." "Well, it's specifically for you," Wan Qingda said. The old man didn't say a word, just let out a hum. It sounded like quite satisfied. Red Bean. It turns out that he sweated a lot early and went hunting. "Really, really powerful," Red Bean said dryly, "and then, I'm sorry, too." As she spoke, Red Bean lowered her head and thought for a moment before finally standing up. She made a deep bow to the old man and said, "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry to say that yesterday she was impolite and out of place. Bringing her little brother on the wedding night, it's easy to tell that she's the one who caused it." But the old man didn't even mention it. Not only that, but he really left the little brother and widow as she thought. This makes Red Bean feel uncomfortable inside. If they were a little more aggressive and concerned, she might not be like this. Red Beans feel so guilty that they can hardly stand up straight. The old man glanced at her and sighed in his heart. In the end, he waved his hand and said, "It's okay, my family. What's the point of being humble?" After speaking, shout for Red Bean to sit down. I couldn't help but think, how good it would be if the old lady were still here. Originally, this should have been explained by a female elder, saying that you are tired and not in any way, but now, he is a man. What do you say? So, in the end, we can only be awkwardly indifferent. Red Beans are a bit timid. Wan Qing seemed to see it and broke the awkwardness directly. "Sorry, since yesterday, you have been a part of the family. You are all from your own family. When you talk about 2 families, you are just too polite, daughter-in-law." As he spoke, he pulled the Red Bean and sat down. Then he directly put a big chicken leg into the Red Bean bowl and said, "Wife, eat." Red Bean felt embarrassed and said, Dad hasn't eaten it yet." "No need, I'll do it myself. As soon as Red Bean finished speaking, the old man quickly picked up a chopstick of food for himself and said with a smile, "This is what the boss made specifically for you." Buzz, Red Beans blushed and then lowered their heads even more to eat. The people at the table couldn't help but burst into friendly laughter as they looked at the Red Beans. Wan Qing. "I'm so shy now, little sample. When I go out, won't I be obsessed with you?" Thinking about it, I picked up another chopstick of food for the Red Bean and placed my long legs under the table, which was not honest. I lightly touched the Red Bean. Red Bean. Just know how to flirt. She is truly convinced. This person has been fidgeting from morning till night. She originally thought that there were too many people and he didn't dare to cause trouble, but she didn't expect that he looked quite the same on the surface, but his legs started to be dishonest again. Red beans feel like they're about to get angry. Move your body sideways, pretending to move a chair to the side. She did it naturally, but Wan Chang across from her was straightforward and clear, and it was he. Wan Qing saw it and glared at him. I can't even stop your mouth from eating. Come with me to practice next afternoon. Ah, brother, don't do it. Wan Chang howled mournfully, then said, Sister-in-law, please advise my brother quickly. I'm already grown up and still practicing. Do I want face or not? I was panting with anger as I spoke. Upon hearing this, Wan Zhuang asked directly, Brother, wasn't it always at night before? Why did it change to next noon? What are you doing at night? What's going on? Wan Qing looked serious and said, It's serious. But the hand placed below hooked the waist of the red bean. Red bean. You get rough for me on and under the table. There was a surge of dark waves, and the red bean's heart was beating fiercely. Looking at Wan Zhuang, who asked about this topic again, if it weren't for his honesty, Red Bean would have directly suspected him of driving. He's still a child. Red Bean's heart was almost awkwardly wrinkled into a ball. Cough cough. Finally, the old man spoke up, Let's eat first, let's talk about things. It's okay, big or small. Thinking this way, he looked at the boss again and said, I truly deserve to be the boss. Sooner or later, I will have to have a grandson. This is the steward's authority. The old man's mind twitched when he thought about this matter, and in the end, he made the next decision. Red beans have no idea what the elderly are thinking and can only eat honestly. To be honest, the food quality of Wanjia is really good. In this generally poor place, they can still eat meat. But think about it, they come from a hunter's background, so it's not surprising that they can eat meat, just. Their dishes are too salty. Actually, it's not too salty. But besides the salty taste, there is nothing else, especially vegetarian dishes. At least there is a little bit of fishiness mixed in the meat dishes, and it's not very wonderful either. In short, it can be eaten, but it doesn't look so delicious. But their whole family ate happily. And there is no sign of disdain at all, indicating that they are easy to support. What about Wudo and Doubao? Wan Zi is really a considerate little girl. She didn't dare to pick up meat when she saw Wudo. At the signal of her father, she started taking care of Wudo, either picking up meat or vegetables for her. However, after a while, the small bowls in front of Wudo were piled up into a small hill. Where is Doubao? In front of him was a steamed yellow-orange egg custard, with a few drops of sesame oil on top. Just a glance at it, Red Bean thought it must be very appealing to the little one. In fact, it is the same. Although 3-year-old Xiaodubo is young, he can still eat on his own, holding his own bowl and eating it deliciously. All of this only makes Red Bean's eyes turn red. She understands that this family treats Wudo and Doubao so well, not only because they are inherently kind, but also because they value her. So as herself, how should she repay this family and how should she get along with them? Red beans are full of worries and grievances. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Who should be in this family? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Who should be in this family? Red Beans just finished a tasteless meal. Perhaps as compensation, just after finishing the meal, Red Bean stood up and said, I'll go wash the dishes. No need. Before Wan Qing spoke, the old man raised his hand and said, there is no rule for women to wash dishes in our family. The eldest is just married and is the groom's official. He is not allowed to wash dishes. These days, the dishes will be handed over to the second and third. As he spoke, he shouted to his second son Wan Chang, second son, go wash the dishes. Oh, I got it. Wan Chang didn't show any signs of resistance, so he took on the job smoothly, as if they really do it frequently in formed rules. It has to be said that this incident shocked and dumbfounded Red Bean. When I came to my senses, I felt like this family was really good. But good things are still ahead. As soon as the old man instructed his second son to go wash the dishes, he raised his hand and directly held back the people of Wanzi, Lao-san, Wudou, and Xiangzi, saying, "You children and families, go out and play first. I have something to tell your elder brother and sister. Law." With a flick of his hand, he entered the inner room. Red Bean looked at Wan Qing, and Wan Qing took the opportunity to touch Red Bean's head and held her hand, then hurriedly rushed into the inner room. Inside the house, the old man sat on the bed. I still hold a burning dry cigarette in my hand. Seeing both of them come in, he waved and said, "Sit down." Red Bean wanted to be polite, but Wan Qing pulled her directly onto the stool. Then he sat quietly on the chair, crossing his legs and saying, "Dad, what do you want us to do?" "What are you doing?" The old man's mouth twitched. "Take a look at this big guy again, he looks good, just follow his mother." In addition to his good looks, this kid also has a lot of strength, good skills, and good eyes. No one is more skilled than him in hunting from all over the country. Because of this, he was once targeted by a general from another city and asked to go follow the general. This is about honoring our ancestors. But this old boy said nothing and said he was tired. He also said that his biggest dream is to have a wife and children on the hot bed. Without a wife, nothing can be done. With this unproductive appearance, he was so angry that he gave the boy who owed him a few broken shoes. But even so, it didn't change his heart. Therefore, with such a delay, this old boy is really idle at home. He hires cats and dogs to walk every day, and hunting is the most serious time. At first, he thought that since this kid had a big heart for play, he could easily find a woman to instill him in this old kid. But he had a high opinion, and even after a few flirtations, he didn't want to. It was just a month ago when he suddenly saw a girl from the Chu family and ended up falling in love with her. It cost 30 taels. He used to be heartbroken, but now looking at this old boy, it seems that he is comfortable. Relax, just relax. The old man sighed in his heart. Then, he touched a pocket on his waist and took out a purse, handing it to Wan Qing. With a stern expression on his face, the old man said, "This is all our family's assets, with a total of 20.7 taels left. Boss, you leave it to your wife, and from now on, we will have your wife take care of our family." "What?" Before Wan Qing could jump up, Red Bean couldn't sit still for a while. A face immediately turned red. I can't be this home." Wan Qing didn't speak, but carefully examined his father's face to see if he was not cheating. He finally caught him, but still asked, "Dad, why is this?" "Why?" The old man shook his head and said indifferently, "Why don't you know? Before, your mother was gone, Azzy was young, and you guys were all rough and didn't know how to manage money. That's why I was in charge of managing money. But now that you're married, the responsibility of being a housekeeper naturally falls on your wife." As he spoke, he looked at Red Bean with a smile and said, "Boss, don't be humble either. If it's up to you, you should be the one. Isn't there a saying from ancient times that there is a male lead outside and a female lead inside? You are also the eldest daughter. Law in the family. Who else is there besides you? Anyway, don't be polite. In the future, everything in the family will be up to you." "But Red Bean still wants to postpone. But Wan Qing directly put the purse into Red Bean's hand and said, "Do you think money is too hot to handle? Who else can be the head of the family besides you? Besides, do you think being in charge is the best job? In the future, your sister in law will have to figure out how to handle the second, third, and Aziz's marriage, daily food and clothing arrangements, and the movement between relatives. So, don't be foolish to think that being in charge is just looking after you. Dad, I just want to avoid idleness." Wan Qing said humbly, grinning at the old man as she spoke. "You The old man almost lifted his broken shoes again when he heard this, but it was in front of his new wife. He could only take a deep breath, put down his shoes, and exclaimed in anger, "A dog can't spit out ivory. It's a good thing to have your wife take care of her. How could it be that you treat her harshly in your mouth?" As he spoke, he looked at Red Bean with a smile and said, "Don't listen to him. What he said is all nonsense." However, because he had been infuriated by Wan Qing before, his face turned red, and when he smiled at Red Bean again, it seemed a bit comical. Puff, Red Bean chuckled inwardly. This father-son harmony really made her less nervous. Just holding the money that Wan Qing stuffed into her hand, Red Bean still felt heavy. This should be all the resources in this family, but the old man still handed it over to her. This made her feel indescribable. The old man trusts her so much that she cannot let him down. In the end, Hongdo stood up and sincerely said, "Dad, I know my husband is joking around and I also know your intentions. Since you are willing to believe me, I will definitely take good care of this family for you." Xianggong. Wan Qing raised her eyebrows when she heard it. "Last night there was so much commotion that my daughter-in-law didn't even call out Xianggong. Did she call out in front of my dad? My wife still needs to be trained." Wan Qing poked inwardly. And inside the house, the old man breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that Red Bean was willing, but what did he mean by his daughter-in-law's words? Take care of this house for him. That's not the case. Therefore, the old man quickly said in a low voice, "It's not for me, it's for yourself." Looking at Hongdo with some confusion, he continued, "Remember, since you entered this door, this home has been yours. Don't say who you're doing for, this is yours. And if your sister comes, you don't have to worry. This is your home. Can't the younger sister come and see you, the older sister, and let them live here with peace of mind? We don't lack them to take a bite." After a sentence, Red Bean's tears flickered. "Dad, she really knew she was wrong. But I didn't expect the old man to give her such a big surprise. He not only didn't blame her for her impoliteness, but also comforted her not to take this matter to heart." For the first time, Red Bean developed a psychological desire to integrate into this family. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Building a grapevine for my wife. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Building a grapevine for my wife. Red Bean's moved mood persisted until outside. Wan Qing is different from her, completely immersed in the sweetness of his wife calling him husband. Seeing no one around, he turned the Red Bean into the room and said with a guilty expression, "Wife, please call out to your husband again, Red Bean. You won, you bad guy who destroys the atmosphere. But in the end, my arms can't withstand my thighs." Red Beans were ultimately succeeded by Wan Qing. Under his fierce attack, Red Bean finally coquettishly and softly called out a few times to become a Xianggong. Wan Qing smacked his lips and said, "It's not bad." Especially as he watched his little daughter-in-law lie in his arms, both delicate and soft, Wan Qing wished it were dark now. Because of this, a pair of eyes were almost on fire. Red Bean was causing trouble and his body was almost limp. Looking at him like this again, he was worried that something might happen, so he quickly withdrew his body. "I still don't think it's safe, just running out with a red face. There is no one in the yard." After the old man instructed her, she didn't know where to go. A few children, including Wan Chang who finished washing dishes, ran out to play with Wan Zhuang and even took Qiangzi away. Wu Dou went out to play with Azzi, along with Xiao Doubao. At this moment, Red Bean carefully scrutinized the house. Wan Qing's home is very large and spacious. There is a small vegetable garden by the wall in the big courtyard, but it's unclear whether it's not taken care of frequently or if the weather is getting cold, and the sparse seedlings are all wilting. Next to the vegetable garden is a well with a wheel-like object on it, which should be used for fetching water. On the other side of the water well and vegetable garden, 2 sturdy wooden sticks were added, and a thick hemp rope was tied on top, which appeared to be a place for hanging clothes. Among them was the most spacious place, reserved as a road, and corresponding to the road in the courtyard were 8 sleek, spacious, and bright blue brick houses. 8 rooms, including a main hall and a stove. Wan Qing didn't know when he came out, and as he looked at Red Bean and their home, he introduced them. As he introduced, he pulled Red Bean's hand and led her towards the direction of the house, saying, "The stove is on the far side, and next to the stove is the warehouse, which contains our grain and leather goods. Our father's room is next to the warehouse, and then Azzy's. Across the main hall, those 3 rooms are Ah Chang, Ah Zhuang, and ours. When dividing the rooms, we relied on drawing lots, so I drew the one on the far side, Qing Jing, right, daughter. In law. Speaking, I want to kiss Red Bean's face again." Red Beans were kissed by him without a temper, struggling to leave. But Wan Qing refused and still held her hand, leading her back. "There's a toilet and a pigsty behind, but our girl is young and doesn't know how to raise pigs, and neither of us can. We just have time and use it as a firewood house," he said. "Underneath that small protrusion is the cellar, which also contains some things, but we don't farm, and our family's grain reserves are not high. The cellar is empty. This is the basic situation of their family." After finishing speaking, Wan Qing pointed to an empty piece of land and said to Red Bean, "Look, is this piece of land good? I used to think that when we gave birth, we would set up a swing in the backyard for the children, and then move a grapevine in the back mountain. When summer comes, my wife will cool off under the grapevine, and the children will swing. After the grapes are grown, I can still let my wife eat. It's so good." As she spoke, Wan Qing pursed her lips, as if she had really said she was drunk. Red Beans are also shy and ignore him. But Wan Qing became more determined and rubbed the Red Bean's body against her stomach, saying, "I don't know if the baby is inside." Boom. Red Bean's face turned red again and he said, 3 sentences without proper form, "I'm ignoring you." Red Beans are about to leave. Wan Qing caught up and wanted to talk, but seeing her daughter. In law's flushed face, she finally stopped the conversation. Then he cleared his throat and said, "I'll take my wife to see our village again." As she spoke, she led the Red Bean by the hand and walked out. Red Bean shook off and said, "Someone. I'm not afraid, our family is at the foot of the mountain, and we're the only ones in this area. There aren't many people around here." Wan Qing grinned and couldn't help but twirl his wife's little white hand. "My wife is so tender. Get out of here." Red Bean couldn't bear it anymore and shook off his hand as he walked out. Wan Qing followed and saw that his wife was really angry, so he didn't hesitate. On the contrary, he said positively, "Our village is close to the mountains, and most of them are hunters. However, there are also differences between hunters. For example, the Dalu family usually goes hunting, but they farm during busy farming seasons. Our family is different. We hunt all year round and we don't have any land at home. Before getting married, my dad asked me if I wanted to buy a few acres of land. I asked you, do you like me hunting or farming? I can do both." Red Bean. This is really a problem. Is winter okay for hunting? Red Bean asked softly. Wan Qing smiled and said, "Ordinary people can't do it, but I can do it. 2 years ago, I dragged back a blind bear from the forest and sold it for a lot of money. Look at our house, it was the one I bought by beating the blind bear." 2 years ago, you were only 17 years old at that time, said Red Bean, grasping the key words. Wan Qing squinted her eyes, and then a pair of bright peach blossom eyes were filled with a smile. "Does my wife care about me?" Red Bean bit her lips, saying that was not right no matter how you said it. "You don't care, it must be a lie. Even a stranger, she couldn't just watch someone beat a blind bear and remain indifferent. Moreover, they are a married couple who have had skin ties before, and there is a good chance they can live a lifetime. And when it comes to concern, this scoundrel is destined to be ruthless. So, she won't say it. Therefore, Red Bean quickly turned its head and ignored Wan Qing's words, instead asking directly, "Do we have to hunt in winter?" "Well, what do we eat if we don't hit?" Wan Qing asked naturally. "But hunting in winter is dangerous." Red Bean sighed and tightly touched the wallet that the old man had just given him, which was 20.7 taels. If they were frugal, they could eat for several years according to the consumption level here. However, not only her, but also the family members probably cannot afford to sit idly by. To make money, one must make money. This is the only idea that Red Bean has at this moment. She was lost in thought and didn't even notice that Wan Qing's gaze was fixed on her again, touching her hand. So cold, the little hand, which was just warm, just came out for a while and became icy cold. Wan Qing felt a bit uneasy in his heart. My wife's health is too weak. Thinking this way, he lightly patted her and said, "It's cold outside. Wife, please go home first. I have some things to go out for. I'll be with you when I come back." As she spoke, Wan Qing took the red beans to her doorstep and ran out step by step, turning back 3 times. Red Bean didn't know what he was going to do, so he kept things in his mind and didn't ask. Looking down and pinching the red envelope given by the old man, I couldn't help but think of that thought in my heart. How can I make money? End of this chapter.